Hi everybody, welcome to AI TV. My name is Nick Bradshaw, I'm the host of the channel, and we're broadcasting live from AI Expo Africa 2020 online. The online edition, because of this year, COVID has forced us into this virtual world, and AI TV and our media setup is now running on Zoom. But the great thing about that means I can talk to anyone around the world at any time. And one such person is Christian van Leeuwen, who is the CTO and founder of FRISS, based in the Netherlands. They are a fraud, risk and compliance company that's using artificial intelligence to do some neat things in the world of insurance and fraud. So Christian, welcome to AI TV. How are you?
Thanks, and thank you for the invitation. I'm doing great. Yeah.
Well, look, Christian, FRISS were at our show from the comfort of the Netherlands. They came to the Netherlands pavilion. We had a country pavilion at the show, which hosted, I think, 12 companies from the Netherlands, and you guys were one of them. So can you tell a little bit about FRISS and what you guys do with AI in the fraud space?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. As a co-founder together, I founded the company together with Jeroen Morgenhoff 14 years ago. And so when we started, we had a sole focus on insurance. So we both had an insurance background. I've been working in AI as like early 90s, where before the cold winter, as I used to explain to everybody, where AI would sit on, let's say, a program, sit on a computer that was not connected to the network because everybody was afraid what it would do. And so we brought all of that knowledge together to fight fraud. And in the end, our purpose as a company is to help insurance carriers to make insurance more honest, or to keep it honest, as we explain it, because in the end, we feel that insurance is a beautiful thing, and it helps society to help the people to live their lives the way they want to live. And unfortunately, we have just a few people that hurt the system by actually committing fraud and try to get money from the carriers, where the insurance carriers then need to do all of these checks and hurt genuine customers, actually. So therefore preventing them, to give them the best experience, but also to increase premiums to make up for the loss they make in fraud. And we don't like that, so we set out our journey to help carriers fight fraud and to assess the risks in the right order. And that's where AI also helps us a lot, because you can imagine in finding these fraudulent patterns, we use a lot of data. And what we do as a company to integrate in the core systems of insurance carriers at that point where they want to step out automatically to check if there are any fraudulent patterns at that moment in underwriting or in claims that might flag a potential fraud.
So you're using AI at the sort of the selling of the product, and also at the other end of the product pipeline, which is where people are making a claim. So what?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Just to explain then to our viewers, what kind of technologies then within the AI, ML, and even deep learning sort of space are you guys actually using, plugging in at the front and the back end of that process?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So apologies. So if we look at the types of AI, I think we use a superior fraud detection, and meaning that fraud is something which, if there are several fraud schemes, you find it in different ways. So we very much believe in a hybrid detection approach. And hybrid means we use like the common business rules, where we have like all of the knowledge that we have gained over the last 14 years we have put in the product. But next to that, we automatically run fraud models, machine learning models on the data that is processed on all of the claims, also on the applications that we see. And these fraud models, they learn and are retrained automatically based on the feedback, what we alert as potential fraud. And once a claim handler, a fraud investigator starts to investigate these alerts, they will then give the feedback on, okay, this is interesting, that I want to look at it. And the system automatically trains based on that feedback
Okay,
to
that's
present
interesting.
the cases in the future. And next to
So,
that,
does that mean you've got human in the loop then? So the model is constantly evolving by a human also being part of that training process. So it's not just relying on learning on its own. There's a human in the loop to actually then improve
yeah,
the accuracy of the model.
yeah, absolutely. And what we've noticed specifically is that so in order AI to work, there are a couple of things that needs to be in place, like computer power, the CPU power, of course. That's all taken care of. Like in the early 90s, that was still a problem, but
Yeah.
today that's not a problem anymore. But the second most important is to have good quality data and availability of data, and that's where in order to not all carriers are at that level that their data is in that quality. So when we start out for a carrier, we both can rely on the huge amount of expertise we have and experience, and they can simply start using our system, and it will grow better and more adapt to their situation while they are using it. And gradually they can also add more data to our process in terms of doing it all on the claim nodes and this unstructured text. So we also have NLP and text mining models run on that to highlight, let's see, very specific statements that claimants make as part of a claim. And these are also taken into account, and that's also in the feedback loop. So we strongly believe that just an AI and throw it in there, the data, and let it do the magic. Yeah, that's so it needs that feedback loop, and it needs to show the user also that whatever we bring forward is they can verify with their own eyes and make a decision upon, because and that's the only way that the AI gets trusted also, because in the space that we're operating in, the computer cannot simply say no. You know the example from a very famous British television show, computer says no.
That's
If
right.
that
Yeah,
doesn't
indeed.
work.
It's good to see that's reached the Netherlands.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So computer says no is not acceptable, and
Yeah.
we need to be able to explain exactly how we came to that conclusion, because the insurance carrier needs to step and needs to do an investigation. In the end, they need to explain to the customer, but also to the regulators, how their process works. So we very much believe that it should be white boxed as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to come on to that point around explainable AI ethics. You know, that this. It's funny that you mentioned earlier. You know, you've been sort of what I call through the real world school of hard knocks with AI. You know, to the point where it was sitting in the corner and people afraid to connect it to the network. You know, to avoid the Matrix scenario. But being serious for a minute, I mean, explainable AI, and let's say, I mean, one of the classic ones would you might be discriminating someone from getting a policy which they need, for example, and if the computer is just working in isolation and saying, or the algorithm is just saying, well, you can't have it, well, why can't I have it? So I think this reliance, this is this next big area of the deployments of these technologies now, that making sure that the technology you're deploying and that your customer is using and that the consumer is interacting with is explainable, is ethically sound, that things like precision, accuracy, and bias are known, and that there is a feedback loop which makes it easier for the software to evolve and improve its accuracy. So where do you see that whole area evolving? I mean, I was talking to Fred Werner from the ITU around standards and things like maturity planning and maturity models for these technologies. This is still very much an emerging area. Have you got any advice to people watching this video for some resources that they can look at in terms of building explainable AI, ethical AI systems? Have you? I mean, this must be something that you're going through yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that there are actually two things that are very important here, and one is on let's say the explainability, is that we separate the scoring part and the explainability part. So if we set up AI as part of our platform, we use it for scoring, but we put the same amount of effort in making sure that we can explain how the AI came to the conclusion. So to white box it, how it came to a decision. So we have separate algorithms that take the outcome of the AI and to more or less reverse engineer the outcome in an explainable way to show to the user how we came to that conclusion. And that's also for us needed to make sure that there's no bias in, there's no redlining, there's no such things in there which are not allowed from a law and regulations perspective. And so that very much helps in making the AI trusted by accepting the decisions that it presents. Because in most cases, like in a weather forecast, you see what kind of weather it is. So that's the evidence that the AI works. But if it says it's just simply a score, you should not trust this claim. It doesn't help in explaining. You cannot see why you can't trust it. So you need to give full openness and argumentation and help in the investigation to show why they cannot trust and they need to do something. The second part is actually that there are a lot of frameworks and on ethical protocols on how to deal with that. Even the European Union, I believe, has published such a document to help out with how to deal with machine learning and how to uphold some of the things we value in terms of privacy. So I very much advise people to look into that and to also work with your local regulators on that. If there are certain frameworks that are available that you can use, and work together with your clients. As a vendor in our case, we work closely together with our vendors our customers, and they have specific departments that look at the way that our models are built up, so they can verify that it does not hold any of these, let's say, the ethical risks that we don't want the models to have.
Oh, it's fascinating. I mean, it's great, Christian. I mean, this is the whole reason why AI TV exists, is to hear from real world practitioners like yourself who've been at this for a long time. And I think the advice you've got there is very sage, in the sense that it's not just one thing you need to do. You need to engage in multiple layers of the client, you, the vendor, the regulator, and as you say, the emerging standards and frameworks which are coming out. We were very lucky to have Kay Firth Butterfield, who was the head of, or she is the head of AI at the World Economic Forum, speak at our event, and they themselves are also building a framework. So again, lots of resources out there. Christian, just to wrap up, and I always like to ask this question for someone who's been in the space for a long time. What do you see is the next exciting big frontier for this technology? I mean, we've got quantum computing now starting to become very tangible and real. What's the next big thing?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of things that are really interesting in this area. So I personally believe that we live in the best age ever, like where technology will help evolve mankind even further. So it will become very much part of our normal lives, where we have like the general AI, where the big companies that we all know and work with, they put in a huge amount of investment to make that part of our daily lives. But I think if we look at the business we're in, I think in looking where AI will move to, is that it will be more or less working closely together with every user, and also to take away more of the routine tasks of a user in the future. And the second thing I believe is that where we've also seen in IT mature, is that AI is now still a thing where you would buy a separate platform, but it will become part of everything we have and everything we do. Therefore, it will become more mainstream. People will accept it more. There will be more. It will also be much easier for everybody to use AI and to leverage the power it has, because it will be part of like any program you use would be tied in there completely. And the last part is that where we in our space is all of these smart devices. We've only seen, let's say, the yeah, the first interesting examples are now popping up. But that will generate a huge amount of new data, which we were not aware of. And also to us, we're looking very much in there, because in full digitalization, that also brings new opportunities for fraud, where we then again have to find new ways of detecting that.
Exactly.
So it's a very interesting area and age that we're living in. I'm very much looking forward to that.
Well, thanks, Christian. I mean, if anybody watched the recent Apple Live event from San Francisco, you know, AI is now being built into every device. You know, I think the exciting frontier, to add to what you've talked about, is AI at the edge, and these things becoming much more powerful as time goes on. But Christian, I just want to say thank you very much for joining us on our AI TV. It's always good to talk to people who've been in the industry for a long time. And thank you also to FRISS, who joined us at the show through our International Pavilion function. It was a great success this year, and we hope to welcome you back next year. Thanks for being on AI
Absolutely.
TV.
Thank you. Thank you very much.